One of Bloomington-Normal's leading human service agencies has been struggling to provide services to help the homeless. What's behind the high turnover at PATH and how other providers are stepping in? That's coming up on WGLT's news magazine, Sound Ideas. Good evening, I'm John Norton. Also on today's show, a new law provides insurance coverage for a new cancer treatment.
It is so good for the patient and good for the pocketbook.
And a fixture at Redbird sporting events for decades will soon become a Missouri Valley Conference Hall of Famer. It's enough to make a professional communicator speechless.
I've always been a words guy, but it's still hard to put into words.
Those stories follow a Bloomington-Normal news update, which is just ahead. This is Sound Ideas on 89.1 WGLT and WGLT.org, part of the NPR network.
Support for WGLT comes from Bloomington-Normal Audiology. Hear My Story continues with local patient Paul Brandt.
So I just went without them for all those years. I talked to somebody who had recently gotten hearing aids and talked about the fact that they were connected to the TV. And so that kind of prompted me to try it again.
Paul's full story can be found at bnaudiology.com.
From the campus of Illinois State University in Normal, this is WGLT's news magazine, Sound Ideas. I'm John Norton with WGLT reporters Melissa Ellen and Lindsay Jones to start the show. They've just wrapped up a deep dive into a Bloomington nonprofit's organizational struggles over the past year. As PATH Crisis Center begins 2024 with a new interim CEO, some former and current staff members and community leaders say the work to stabilize the 53-year-old social service is ongoing. First of all, Melissa, Lindsay, thanks for joining us on Sound Ideas in studio today.
Thanks for having us, John.
I'm going to start with you, Melissa. Briefly,
right.
Can you what happened?
So I think it's important to start by saying that PATH's CEO died in April. So there was an interim who took over as CEO and executive director. And that person made some pretty sweeping changes. Executive leadership was effectively gutted. So some positions turned over multiple times. And through this and our reporting, we understand that there was institutional information lost, and the organization is really just still trying to recover from that.
Lindsay, can I turn to you and ask you why this even matters? Why does it matter?
Yeah, that's a great question. PATH has been around in our community for over half a century, and they're a key player in the social services scene, not just in McLean County, but also several others in central Illinois as well. They operate both the 211 referral line and the 988 crisis line. So a sudden loss of institutional knowledge about what it takes for PATH as a nonprofit to function and work with other agencies is definitely going to affect it. And that's played out in employee turnover at the state's largest 988 crisis call center, which PATH operates. And that's also impacted the extent to which it provides homeless services in our area. So in our story, we speak with Matt Burgess, the CEO of Home Sweet Home Ministries, about how his agency has had to pick up some additional services, like sourcing ID cards because of what's happened at PATH. Burgess told us this.
We expect this to be something that we continue to do, both because it makes sense for us to do in the setting of our community center where people from the public are coming in, but also out of necessity. I would only speculate to say whether PATH would take this back up or not.
Melissa, I'm going to go back to you on this one. How did you find out about it?
You know, I can't reveal my sources. What I can say is that this has been a conversation in certain social circles in the community for a while now. As Lindsay said before, PATH's reach is pretty wide in our community and central Illinois as a whole. A lot of individuals and organizations that collaborate with PATH have been talking about this, and that includes local government. I really don't think anyone, including us, recognize the extent to which all of the turnover and the changes within PATH have impacted everything. So that comes down to day-to-day operations in the organization too.
Okay, speaking of not revealing sources, my limited understanding of the story, though, is there are a few people included whose names are not revealed. Can you talk about that? Lindsay?
Yeah, so we spoke to a lot of people for this story. It was at least a dozen. And you're not going to see all of them quoted, but every single one of them helped us get a better grasp of what happened really over the past year within PATH. Some of those people that we spoke to, they work at PATH. Some of them used to work there, but they're all still connected to that organization. And I think the culture there was so uncertain for a time that while people really wanted to voice their concerns for the organization, they also weren't sure if they could do that. So we agreed to keep some folks' names out of the story, but in doing so, we also cross-checked what they told us with either other additional sources who could back them up or people who agreed to go on record with us. So there was a lot of fact-checking and supplemental verification of claims on our end to make sure this was as accurate as possible, even though some names are not included.
Okay.
Yeah, and if I can add something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we learned a lot about PATH through our reporting, probably more than we ever needed to know about the organization. Nevertheless, our story is not a reflection of everything that we did learn. It literally could not be. What the story is meant to do is to give people an understanding of where PATH is heading, how it got to this point as well. So it's not a secret that PATH has been going through organizational changes. We've established that. People in the community knew about this. But what people don't necessarily know, and what we hope to share through this story, is the impact that this has had in the community. And, there's still time for change. There's a new interim CEO, which we've mentioned. Adam Carter is his name. And we spoke to him, and he was pretty transparent about the fact that PATH is actively turning over a new leaf, starting a new chapter, and it's getting help from the community to be able to do this.
All right, you've mentioned interim CEO a couple of times now. Adam Carter, you just mentioned him by name. How long has he been there?
Yeah, so I'll take that one. He accepted the offer from the board of directors on December 27th, so the position was filled relatively recently. The board did tell us they are currently in the process of searching for an actual permanent CEO. They haven't had that permanently filled since April of last year. Adam Carter did tell us that he threw his hat in the ring for the job, but the board says they've had over 80 applications so far. They haven't set a hard deadline for their hiring process, but they've emphasized to us the process is really about finding the best fit for that position, however long that may take.
Melissa, I'm going to go to you on this one. What happened between April and December?
So you're right. There were about 8 months where there was an interim CEO in place who was not Adam Carter. We were not able to connect with this person. We did reach out to her multiple times and just never heard back. Now, there was a lot of staff turnover during this time, and some of the people that we spoke to were pretty troubled by some of the decisions that she made. We were told there was a sudden cultural shift, particularly in the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline call center, and it became really difficult, according to those people, for them to be able to work there. A lot of people also lost their jobs, including Adam Carter. So he actually was brought back to the organization to serve as interim CEO. And it's essentially a different organization now, and we really do get more into this in the story itself.
Wow. This is quite a few twists and turns already in this story. Let's go to Lindsay now. And is it too early to say? Are things getting better?
I mean, that's the hope, right? I think that's, the hope not only of the people that are directly involved with PATH, but also many of the community partners, whether they're, local government leaders or other social service agencies. The hope is that the organization has turned a new chapter. Some of the people that we've spoken to for the story have reached out since Adam Carter was brought back, and they've expressed optimism that he's at the helm, and they're hopeful for the future because of that. We were able to speak to him directly after his appointment, and I think he sums up his vision for the organization nicely himself.
What I want to share is that from a transparent perspective, if I do transition out, my goal and what I would like to look back on is to see that the relationship aspect that PATH was formed on has been brought back to the center and the forefront of what we do.
Guys, what a story. Thank you for reporting on it. Probably a lot more to the story still to come.
We'd say so.
Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be opportunities for us to follow up and watch this transition play out in the coming months for sure.
Well, certainly nice job on this very difficult story to report on. Lindsay Jones, Melissa Ellen from the WGLT Newsroom, thanks for the reporting and thanks for joining us on Sound Ideas today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stories and conversations around Bloomington-Normal and McLean County. This is WGLT's news magazine, Sound Ideas. I'm John Norton. 2 healthcare reform laws sponsored by State Senator Dave Koehler went into effect at the start of this year. Koehler is a Democrat who represents parts of Bloomington-Normal. One measure provides that proton beam therapy will now be covered for cancer patients in Illinois. Proton beam therapy is considered a more precise form of radiation. Studies suggest the treatment causes fewer side effects. Koehler tells WGLT correspondent Tim Alexander proton therapy will help make Central Illinois a healthcare destination. That is, once the OSF Healthcare Cancer Institute opens in Peoria.
We're now going to have the second proton beam in Illinois. The other one is at Northwestern University Hospital. This one, however, is a little bit more advanced as the technology changes. Every time you get a new machine, you get a more advanced machine. And so we will have the state-of-the-art right here in Peoria. And what a great thing it is for all of us living in this area. The legislation was important because we wanted to make sure that we required health insurance to cover this, because this is the kind of therapy that really can be cost savings and can, I think, be much more effective from what I know. I mean, I'm a layman in this, but from what I've heard and what has been described to me, this is a much better way, much more efficient way of dealing with cancer, where you can really zero in on it and not affect any of the tissues around it. So we wanted to make sure that this is covered by managed care organizations, that it's covered by insurance plans, and that we really encourage utilization of this, because it is so good for the patient and good for the pocketbook.
What about those on public insurance? Do you think this bill does that also?
Yes.
Those on public
yes. The Medicaid program is basically run by managed care organizations, and this does mandate that they cover that as well.
Okay, very good. Now that bill was now you've got another exciting bill that covers price gouging of generic medication, and you want to end that price gouging through House Bill 3957, the Illinois Generic Drug Pricing Fairness Act. Can you flesh that out for us?
Yes. So what it does is it prohibits manufacturers of wholesale drugs from engaging in price gouging of essential, off-patent, and generic drugs. And so what that means is that these are drugs that people need and use a lot. And so what we've said to our Health and Family Services Department in the state of Illinois is that anytime they notice, and that's the group that handles Medicaid, anytime that they notice that they're seeing bills come in where a drug is all of a sudden, because it's in high demand and maybe low supply, that the price goes way up, that's price gouging. And so we're saying that they have to now notify the Attorney General that there's a potential price gouging here going on, and then this gives the Attorney General the authorization to go after price gouging. So we're really trying to hold down the cost of prescription drugs for people who really need, where this is an essential part of their healthcare.
Let's shift gears a little bit, if we may, Senator Koehler. We're joined by Senator Dave Koehler, a Democrat from Peoria. On Tuesday, Senator Koehler, the 16th of January, the new legislative session begins in Springfield. What are some of the top issues you're going to be focusing on during that legislative session and in the Assembly as a whole?
Well, this is the second year of our General Assembly. We start after the election of 2022. We were sworn in January of 2023, and so you have a 2-year cycle. And so a lot of the bills that didn't make it out of either the House or the Senate last year, they're still alive. Some of those will be pursued. I've got several of those. So it's going to be trying to clean up a lot of the bills that have been submitted already, plus new ones. This is going to be a little bit of a shortened year since it is an election year. We have a primary coming up in March. But always, first and foremost, is the budget. And the governor will present his State of the Budget address to the legislature, and we will pass a budget, and it'll be a balanced budget by the end of May. So that's going to be the focus this year.
That was State Senator Dave Koehler speaking with WGLT correspondent Tim Alexander. This is Sound Ideas, WGLT's news magazine. I'm John Norton. Thanks for listening on this Thursday. If you're hosting a college basketball tournament, you need three things: a court, a ball, and Tom LaMonica. Well, it's a slight exaggeration, but not much. LaMonica is a volunteer fixture at the Missouri Valley Conference men's and women's basketball tournaments every spring. That's just one part of an impressive career, mostly spent at Illinois State University, first as the Redbird Sports Information Director, and now as an educator in the School of Communication. For almost half a century of work in college sports, LaMonica in March will be inducted into the Missouri Valley Conference Hall of Fame. In this interview with WGLT correspondent Randy Kindred, the 71-year-old LaMonica says he's got no plans to slow down.
In March, I'm usually at the men's tournament, and then the next week at the women's tournament, and then one of the weeks after that, I work an NCAA tournament. This year, I'm going to Omaha to be part of that first and second round. And then by the time I get back to my nice office in Fell Hall and look around and say, boy, being a college professor is a really good gig, because it's those 3 weeks are long enough to remind me that retirement was the right decision.
Yeah. And you probably have done numerous jobs in all of those tournaments. I mean, you've probably had a sampling of about everything there is that needs to be done, haven't you?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I've done credential security. I've done I do the Hall of Fame with the Missouri Valley. I do broadcast assistance. I do game notes. Mm-hmm. So when I go to a communications leader for an NCAA event, and they say, "Well, what have you done, or what can you do?" I put whatever you need done. Now, an NCAA tournament, the seating chart is kind of an important thing, because people always feel like they deserve a better seat than they've got, or closer to the court than they've got. And so I ended up spending the next, I think it was 9 or 10 hours with all the information kind of holed up in my hotel room and producing a seating chart for them. So I'm open to whatever, because if you've been a tournament communication manager, you've done all that stuff already.
I remember doing a story for the Pantograph when you retired from athletic communications. In a lot of people's mind, I think, well, that's the end of a career, but you were just kind of getting started at that point, weren't you? I mean, you've gone on, and I know you taught classes in the School of Communications even before that, but now, you know, you've continued for whatever, 17 years or whatever it's been, and teaching classes and running the internship program, and it seems like you're probably busier than ever now than you were back then.
I really am not as busy as I was back then, but all the things that you mentioned, those have been exciting and fulfilling things, working with the Communication Week interns, working with alumni like yourself, bringing people back to campus to speak. That's all been a labor of love, and we're in the process of trying to get final campus approval and state approval for a sports communication major, and that really makes the future look even more exciting. So I'm hoping that I can stick around and continue to be part of that. I've been teaching a course in sports communication for 5 years. I designed it about 5 years ago, and it's the first course for that major. We're just waiting on the paperwork, and we think that'll be a very popular major here at Illinois State.
Is the best part about what you're doing now is obviously you're working with students who are 18 to 22, and it probably kind of keeps you young at heart anyway, doesn't it? And it probably keeps you in tune with some of the attitudes and approaches to life that maybe they have that students 20 years ago wouldn't have had.
You know, you hit that on the head. That's a big part of it. Since the Hall of Fame announcement was made, I've heard from several hundred people in various forms of social media, phone calls, and even some handwritten notes. And my response to the ones who say, "I can't believe you're still working," is that, you know, I get older every year, but the freshmen are always 18. And now those freshmen are not that much older than my grandsons. And it's been exciting to see the change. And, you know, as a parent, you saw that, and now you've seen how things have changed. Events have changed people. Children are raised much differently than you and I were, and I would argue than we raised our children. But I really get excited about working with the students that come along today, because they all have a great work ethic that we get here at Illinois State, they want to succeed and they want to please people. And that's, to me, that's the foundation. A lot of other things about that people argue and fuss about with young people, they're not as important to me as that willingness to succeed, that desire to succeed and to please people and to do what's good for other people.
To have them honor you like this, what does it mean to you?
You know, it's kind of hard. I've always been a words guy, but it's still hard to put into words. You know, I've worked with, as you know, I've worked with the Hall of Famers for the last 15 years at the particular Missouri Valley Conference event. In fact, when Jeff Jackson called me to let me know that I was being admitted into the Hall of Fame, the first thing he said to me, he goes, "Your usual job during the Men's Valley tournament, you're not going to be doing that this year." And there was a kind of a pause on the line. I'm thinking, uh-oh, I'm fired. I've made somebody unhappy. But he said, and then he told me, he said, because you're going to be one of those people and we'll have somebody else lead them around. But that experience has been helpful to me, because if you can imagine, every single year I meet 5, 6, 7 people who have had extraordinary careers. And their humility about it is amazing.
Boomer Grigsby, the great linebacker from ISU, is going in this year as well. So you and Boomer are like the 16th and 17th people from Illinois State to go into the Missouri Valley Hall of Fame. And most of those people you were very familiar with, probably worked with. And just to be in the same Hall of Fame with those people is probably a big honor, isn't it?
It is. It's an amazing honor, and I am excited to go in with Boomer, who was in the early 2000s an outstanding player for the Redbird football team, National Defensive Player of the Year, Valley all-time leader in tackles, and a great guy with a great sense of humor. Played in the NFL. I remember helping proofread the football roster while Boomer was a student athlete at Illinois State. And I remember looking at him and saying, 6 feet, 245. Hey, that's me. So, you know, I can say that I have that in common with Boomer. But again, he's, I like to say he is the 16th and I'm coming after him. But it is surreal to be part of this.
That's Tom LaMonica, the former sports information director at ISU Athletics. He's being inducted into the Missouri Valley Conference Hall of Fame in March. That's alongside former Redbird football star Boomer Grigsby. LaMonica spoke with WGLT correspondent Randy Kindred. And that's Sound Ideas today. WGLT's news magazine is made possible in part by Bloomington-Normal Audiology. I'm John Norton. Story help today from WGLT's Melissa Ellen and Lindsay Jones in studio. You also heard from correspondent Tim Alexander and correspondent Randy Kindred. Ryan Toohey edits the show. This is 89.1 WGLT and WGLT.org, part of the NPR network.